You better get your black ass out of this neighborhood before I make you regret it. The words cut through the afternoon air like a knife. A police officer stands over a black man in casual clothes, his voice dripping with contempt and authority. I don't care what lies you're about to tell me. People like you don't live here. The man holds flowers and a gift bag, clearly visiting someone. But Officer Derek Sullivan sees only what his prejudice tells him to see. When the man tries to speak, Sullivan cuts him off again. Shut your mouth and put your hands where I can see them. This dashcam footage captured more than just another traffic stop gone wrong. It exposed a web of systemic racism that reached the highest levels of Richmond's police department. What Sullivan didn't know was that his victim wasn't just another black man he could intimidate and humiliate. Have you ever been completely wrong about someone based on nothing but their appearance? Saturday morning, 7:30 a.m. Dr. Jonathan Williams finishes his daily jog through downtown Richmond, the same route he's taken for 15 years as mayor. Steam rises from his coffee cup as he checks his phone outside the local diner. His calendar shows the usual weekend family time, then Monday's packed schedule. City council meeting, budget review, community forum on police reform. Jonathan has always believed in being accessible to his constituents. He shops at the same grocery stores, eats at the same restaurants, and lives in the same neighborhoods as the people who elected him. Today, like most Saturdays, he's dressed in workout clothes and driving his modest Honda Accord to visit his daughter Emma at her new apartment. But 3 miles across town, Officer Derek Sullivan is beginning his patrol shift with a very different mindset. Sullivan's personnel file tells a troubling story that Richmond PD has ignored for too long. Last December, he pulled over Marcus Thompson, a black investment banker, demanding to search his BMW because it was too expensive for someone like you. When Thompson produced his business card and registration, Sullivan accused him of theft and kept him handcuffed on the roadside for 2 hours until a supervisor arrived. In March, Sullivan confronted a group of black teenagers outside the community center, claiming they were loitering with intent. The teens were actually volunteers cleaning up after a youth basketball tournament. Parents filed complaints. Internal affairs buried them in paperwork. 2 months ago, Sullivan approached the Johnson family during their picnic at Riverside Park. He demanded ID from everyone, including the children, saying their gathering looked suspicious. Mrs. Johnson later told reporters, "He treated us like criminals for having a family barbecue." Each incident followed the same pattern. Sullivan's confidence grew, his aggression escalated, and the department protected him. His sergeant, Lisa Carter, had begun to notice the complaints but felt pressure from above to avoid making waves. The union backed Sullivan every time. Nothing changed. Meanwhile, the Riverside district where Emma Williams had recently moved told its own story of tension. Once exclusively white and wealthy, the neighborhood had slowly become more diverse as young professionals of all backgrounds moved in. Old-timers like Mrs. Patterson, who'd lived there 40 years, welcomed the change, but others resented what they saw as an invasion. Emma had chosen the apartment despite her father's gentle warnings. "Dad, I'm not going to let fear dictate where I live," she'd told him. "Besides, you always taught me to be the change I want to see." Jonathan had smiled at that, proud of his daughter's courage, but secretly worried about exactly this kind of encounter. The previous month, 2 other black residents in Riverside had been stopped by police for suspicious activity. One was carrying groceries to his car. The other was walking his dog. Both incidents were reported to the mayor's office through normal channels, but the paperwork had been quietly filed away before reaching Jonathan's desk. Now, as Jonathan drives toward Emma's street with flowers from her favorite shop and a housewarming gift, he has no idea that Officer Sullivan has been circling the neighborhood for the past hour, looking for what he calls problems. Sullivan's radio crackles with routine calls, a fender bender on Main Street, a noise complaint downtown, nothing that interests him. He prefers the kind of police work that lets him exercise authority over people he considers beneath him. At 2:10 p.m., Sullivan turns onto Riverside Avenue and sees exactly what he's been looking for, a black man walking purposefully toward one of the neighborhood's nicest houses. The man carries flowers and a gift bag, but Sullivan doesn't see a father visiting his daughter. He sees an opportunity. "Dispatch, I've got a suspicious individual in the Riverside district, Sullivan reports, his voice already shifting into the aggressive tone his colleagues know well. Possible breaking and entering suspect, requesting backup. The dispatcher asks for details. Sullivan provides none that matter. What Sullivan doesn't know is that Mrs. Patterson, watering her garden 3 houses down, has already recognized the approaching visitor. She's voted for Jonathan Williams in every mayoral election since he first ran 15 years ago. She knows exactly who's about to be humiliated on her street. But Sullivan has already made up his mind about what's going to happen next. And in his 15 years as a cop, he's never been wrong about people like this. Has he? Officer Derek Sullivan slams his patrol car door with deliberate force, the sound echoing through the quiet Saturday afternoon like a gunshot. Jonathan Williams is still 50 yards from Emma's front door when Sullivan's voice cuts across the manicured lawns. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" Jonathan pauses, turns calmly. He's been through implicit bias training as mayor. He knows exactly what's happening, and he knows that any sudden movement could escalate this beyond repair. "Good afternoon, officer. How can I help you?" Sullivan strides forward, his hand instinctively moving to his service weapon. "Don't give me that polite act. What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I'm visiting my daughter. She lives right there." Jonathan nods toward Emma's apartment building, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. "Sure you are." Sullivan's laugh is ugly, meant to humiliate. "Let me guess. You're the gardener, the maintenance man, or maybe you're just chasing the place for later." The flowers in Jonathan's hand suddenly feel absurd, like props in a play he never auditioned for. "Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but I'm just here to see my family." "Your family?" Sullivan steps closer, invading Jonathan's personal space. "What family? You think I'm stupid? People like you don't have family in neighborhoods like this." The casual cruelty in Sullivan's voice makes something twist in Jonathan's stomach. He's heard this tone before. In city council meetings when discussing police reform, in budget hearings when community leaders demand accountability. But experiencing it firsthand, feeling the weight of Sullivan's contempt pressing down on him is different. "Officer, I'd be happy to show you my identification if that would help resolve this situation." "Oh, you'll show me my ID, all right. Hands out of your pockets, drop that bag now." Jonathan complies, setting down the gift bag and flowers with careful precision. His driver's license is clear, current, and shows his Richmond address. But Sullivan barely glances at it. "Derek Sullivan," he reads from the license, his voice mocking. "Funny, this doesn't look like you. Where'd you steal this from?" "That's my legal name, officer. I live at 1247 Monument Avenue." Sullivan's radio crackles. "Unit 23, status update on your suspicious person call." "The subject is being uncooperative," Sullivan responds, his eyes never leaving Jonathan. "Claims to live at a Monument Avenue address, but ID appears suspicious. Still investigating." From her window 3 houses down, Mrs. Patterson watches in growing horror. She's known Jonathan Williams for 15 years, watched him campaign in this very neighborhood, seen him at community meetings and charity events. She fumbles for her phone, not sure who to call, but knowing she needs to document this. "Officer Sullivan," Jonathan tries again. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. If you'd like to verify my identity, you can call. I'll verify whatever I damn well please. You don't tell me how to do my job, boy." The word hangs in the air like smoke. Jonathan feels something cold settle in his chest. In all his years in politics, through every heated debate and contentious election, no one has ever called him boy to his face. "Sir, that language is inappropriate and—" "What did you just say to me?" Sullivan's voice rises to a shout. "Did you just tell me what's appropriate? You're trespassing in a neighborhood where you don't belong, carrying a stolen ID, and now you're telling me how to talk?" A jogger across the street slows down, then stops entirely. She pulls out her phone and starts recording. Sullivan notices, but doesn't care. He's performed this dance too many times to worry about witnesses. "Turn around, hands behind your back." "Officer, I haven't committed any crime. I'm simply visiting." "Resisting arrest. That's a crime." Sullivan reaches for his handcuffs. "Maybe a night in lockup will teach you some respect." That's when Emma's voice cuts through the tension like a blade. "Dad? Dad, what's happening?" She's running down the front steps of her building, still in her weekend clothes, her face a mask of confusion and a growing alarm. Sullivan turns toward her, his demeanor instantly shifting. "Ma'am, please step back." This individual was acting suspiciously near your building. We're handling the situation." "Individual?" Emma's voice climbs an octave. "That's my father!" Sullivan's laugh is sharp and disbelieving. "Right, and I'm the Pope. Ma'am, this man was clearly planning to break into your building. You don't need to be scared anymore." Emma stares at Sullivan like he's grown a second head. "Officer, I don't know what you think is happening here, but that man is Dr. Jonathan Williams. He's my father, and he's here because I invited him." "Sure he is." Sullivan's voice drips sarcasm. "Lady, I know you're trying to be nice, but this guy is playing you. People like him don't have daughters like you." The casual racism in that statement hits Emma like a physical blow. She's biracial, her mother white and her father black, and she's spent her entire life navigating comments like this. But hearing it directed at her father, seeing him treated like a criminal for the crime of existing in public, ignites something fierce in her chest. "People like him? Officer, do you know who you're talking to? Some punk who got lucky finding a girl to lie for him?" Mrs. Patterson can't stand it anymore. She hurries down her front walkway, her phone already recording. "Officer! Officer, that man is Mayor Williams!" "What on earth are you doing?" Sullivan spins around, irritation flashing across his face. "Ma'am, please return to your home. This is police business." "Police business?" Mrs. Patterson's voice shakes with indignation. "You're harassing the mayor of this city! Jonathan, honey, are you all right?" More neighbors are emerging now. College students from the apartment complex across the street, their phones out and recording. A young couple walking their dog, stopping to stare. An elderly man watering his garden, craning his neck to see what's happening. Sullivan feels the situation slipping away from him, but his pride won't let him back down. In his mind, he's come too far to retreat now. "I don't care if you people want to lie for this guy. I know what I see, and what I see is a suspect who doesn't belong here." "Officer," Jonathan says quietly, "I understand this is an unusual situation, but I really am the mayor of Richmond. If you'd like to call the police chief or city hall or—" "The mayor?" Sullivan's voice cracks with cruel laughter. "The mayor of Richmond? You? That's the best story you've come up with yet." He keys his radio again. "Dispatch, I need that backup now. The subject is escalating, making false claims about being a city official. Multiple civilians interfering with police business." The dispatcher's voice comes back professional but puzzled. "Unit 23, can you clarify the nature of the false claims?" Sullivan hesitates for just a moment. When he speaks again, his voice carries less certainty than before. "Subject claims to be the mayor." Silence on the radio. Then, "Unit 23, please repeat that last transmission." In the crowd of onlookers, someone whispers, "Oh my God, he really doesn't know." Sullivan looks around at the faces surrounding him. Mrs. Patterson's horror, Emma's fury, the neighbor's disbelief. For the first time since this began, a small seed of doubt plants itself in his mind. But by then, it's far too late to undo what he's already done. The backup arrives in a screech of tires and flashing lights. Officer Maria Martinez steps out of her patrol car and immediately senses something is very wrong. The crowd of neighbors, the phones recording, the palpable tension in the air. This isn't a routine call. "Sullivan, what's the situation?" Martinez asks, but her eyes are already scanning the scene with growing unease. "Got a trespasser making wild claims," Sullivan replies, but his voice lacks the confidence it had 5 minutes ago. "Says he's the mayor." Martinez looks at Jonathan Williams, really looks at him. She's worked Richmond PD for 8 years, attended dozens of city council meetings, seen the mayor at community events and press conferences. Her face goes pale. "Derek," she says quietly, "we need to talk, right now." But Sullivan is too committed to his course to listen. "Martinez, just help me get this guy in the car. We can sort out his stories downtown." "Officer Sullivan," Mrs. Patterson calls out, her voice shaking with anger. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years. I've voted for Mayor Williams in every election since 2009. That man has been to my house for community meetings. What is wrong with you?" The crowd murmurs in agreement. Someone shouts, "That's definitely the mayor." Another voice adds, "This is insane." Sullivan's radio crackles again. "Unit 23, Sergeant Carter is en route to your location. Maintain status quo until her arrival." Martinez grabs Sullivan's arm. "Derek, I'm telling you, we need to step back and reassess this situation." "You think they got to you too?" Sullivan snaps. It's a whole neighborhood conspiracy to protect some criminal? That's when Sergeant Lisa Carter arrives. She's Sullivan's direct supervisor, a 15-year veteran with a reputation for being tough but fair. She steps out of her vehicle and surveys the scene with the practiced eye of someone who's seen every kind of police situation imaginable. The first thing she notices is the phones. At least 6 people are recording, and she knows that means this incident is probably already on social media. The second thing she notices is Jonathan Williams' face, calm, dignified, and definitely familiar. "Officers, what's the status here?" Carter asks, but she's already pulling Martinez aside. "Sarge," Martinez whispers urgently, "I think Sullivan just detained the mayor." Chen closes her eyes for a long moment. When she opens them, her expression is grim. "You think, or you know?" "I've seen him at dozens of city events. That's Mayor Williams." Chen approaches Jonathan. "Sir, I'm Sergeant Carter. I apologize for any confusion. May I see your identification?" Jonathan hands over his driver's license. Carter examines it carefully, then looks at his face, then back at the license. Her shoulders sag slightly. "Sir, again I apologize. There seems to have been a significant misunderstanding." "Sarge!" Sullivan protests. "You can't seriously believe—" "Officer Sullivan, you need to stop talking immediately." Carter cuts him off sharply. "In fact, I need you to return to your vehicle and wait for further instructions." "But that's an order." Sullivan's face flushes red, but he complies. As he walks away, the crowd of neighbors watches him with expressions ranging from disgust to disbelief. Chen turns back to Jonathan. "Mr. Mayor, I can't apologize enough for this incident. Is there anything you need? Medical attention? A ride anywhere?" Jonathan shakes his head. "Thank you, Sergeant. I appreciate your professionalism. I just want to visit my daughter and put this behind us." But Emma steps forward, her face set with determination. "Dad, you can't just let this go. This officer called you boy, accused you of stealing your own ID, and tried to arrest you for visiting me. This isn't something we put behind us." Chen nods grimly. "Ma'am, you're absolutely right. This incident will be fully investigated. I guarantee it." Mrs. Patterson approaches with her phone still recording. "Sergeant, I've got the whole thing on video. That officer's behavior was absolutely disgraceful." "Thank you, ma'am. We'll need copies of any recordings as part of our investigation." Martinez, who's been quietly taking notes, adds, "Sarge, this isn't Sullivan's first complaint. There have been multiple incidents this year." Chen's jaw tightens. "I'm aware of Officer Sullivan's history. That's exactly why this needs to be handled properly." She keys her radio. "Dispatch, I need Detective Williams and a supervisor from Internal Affairs at my location immediately. Priority response." Jonathan looks at his daughter. "Honey, can we go inside? I think I've had enough excitement for one day." Emma nods, but her expression remains fierce. "Dad, this isn't over. What happened here today, it can't be allowed to stand." As they walk toward her building, the crowd begins to disperse, but the phones keep recording. Within an hour, videos of the incident are spreading across social media with hashtags like #MayorDetained and #RichmondPDShame. Sullivan sits in his patrol car watching it all unfold, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what he's done. But understanding comes too late to undo anything. Internal Affairs Detective Patricia Williams arrives at the scene 30 minutes later to find a situation that has already spiraled beyond damage control. Her partner, Detective Robert Chang, follows close behind, both of them wearing the grim expressions of investigators who know they're about to inherit a career-defining case. Social media is already exploding. #RichmondPDShame is trending locally. Videos from multiple angles show the same devastating sequence. A police officer humiliating a black man who is simply visiting his daughter. The comment sections are brutal, filled with outrage and demands for justice. Detective Williams approaches Sergeant Carter first. "Lisa, give me the situation." Sullivan detained a civilian for what he called suspicious activity. The civilian was walking to visit his daughter in the Riverside district. And, Chen takes a deep breath, the civilian is Mayor Jonathan Williams. Detective Williams, no relation to the mayor despite sharing a last name, stops writing in her notebook. She looks up slowly. "Say that again." "The man Officer Sullivan detained accused of trespassing, called boy, and threatened to arrest is the mayor of Richmond." The color drains from Detective Williams' face. In her 12 years with Internal Affairs, she's investigated police misconduct ranging from excessive force to corruption. But she's never dealt with an officer who detained the mayor of the city while calling him racial slurs. Where's Sullivan now? In his patrol car. I ordered him to stand down. Detective Chang approaches Officer Martinez, who's been taking detailed notes throughout the entire incident. Officer Martinez, I need your account of what happened here. Martinez flips through her notebook. I arrived to provide backup for Officer Sullivan's suspicious person call. When I saw the subject, I immediately recognized him as Mayor Williams. I attempted to inform Officer Sullivan, but he refused to listen. You're certain of the identification? Absolutely certain. I've seen the mayor at community meetings, press conferences, and city events. There's no doubt. Detective Chang walks over to Sullivan's patrol car and taps on the window. Sullivan rolls it down, his face still flushed with anger and growing embarrassment. Officer Sullivan, I'm Detective Chang, Internal Affairs. I need you to return to headquarters immediately for questioning. What question? I did my job. I responded to a suspicious person's call. The suspicious person you detained is Mayor Jonathan Williams. Sullivan's mouth opens, then closes. For the first time since this began, he looks genuinely uncertain. That's impossible. The mayor he doesn't look like what? Officer Sullivan? Sullivan realizes he's about to dig himself deeper and stops talking. 3 hours later, in interview room B at Richmond Police Headquarters, Detective Williams sits across from Jonathan Williams with a digital recorder between them. The mayor has declined legal representation, saying he wants this process to be as transparent as possible. Mr. Mayor, for the record, please state your full name and occupation. Dr. Jonathan Marcus Williams. I am the mayor of Richmond, Virginia, currently serving my 4th term in office. The simple statement lands in the room like a thunderclap. Detective Williams has been preparing for this moment, but hearing it officially recorded makes the magnitude of Sullivan's actions crystal clear. Sir, can you walk me through today's events from your perspective? Jonathan's voice remains calm and measured as he recounts the afternoon. The flowers for his daughter, the gift for her new apartment, Sullivan's immediate aggression, the racial slurs, the refusal to accept valid identification. At what point did you inform Officer Sullivan of your position as mayor? I attempted several times. When he questioned my identification, I suggested he could verify my identity through the police chief or city hall. He refused to listen. Detective Williams reviews her notes. Sir, Officer Sullivan's report claims you were evasive and uncooperative. How do you respond to that characterization? Jonathan's laugh is bitter. Detective, I've been in public service for 15 years. I've worked with police officers at every level, from patrol officers to the chief. I know how to interact professionally with law enforcement. What happened today wasn't about my cooperation. It was about Officer Sullivan's preconceptions. Meanwhile, in interview room A, Detective Chang is having a very different conversation with Officer Sullivan. Derek, help me understand your thinking process today. Sullivan shifts uncomfortably in his chair. I saw a suspicious individual in an upscale neighborhood. It's my job to investigate. What made him suspicious? He was out of place. How so? You know how. Come on, Chang, you've worked in these neighborhoods. You know who belongs and who doesn't. Detective Chang leans forward. No, Derek, I don't know. Explain it to me. Sullivan realizes he's trapped. Any answer he gives will either be an admission of racial profiling or make him sound delusional. The man was acting suspicious, walking purposefully toward expensive homes, carrying flowers and a gift bag to visit his daughter. I didn't know that at the time. But when he told you, when his daughter confirmed it, when multiple neighbors vouched for him, why didn't you believe them? Sullivan has no good answer. Detective Chang slides a photograph across the table. It's Mayor Williams at a recent press conference, wearing a suit and tie, looking every inch the professional politician. Do you recognize this man, Derek? Sullivan stares at the photo. The resemblance is undeniable, but his mind rebels against accepting it. It could be him. But how was I supposed to know? He wasn't dressed like a mayor. How exactly is a mayor supposed to dress on a Saturday afternoon when visiting his daughter? The question hangs in the air, highlighting the absurdity of Sullivan's entire defense. Back in interview room B, Detective Williams is wrapping up her session with Jonathan. Mr. Mayor, what outcome are you seeking from this investigation? Jonathan considers the question carefully. Detective, this isn't about me. Today I experienced what countless black men in this city experience regularly. The difference is that I have the platform and authority to demand accountability. I want a full investigation. I want to understand how Officer Sullivan's previous complaints were handled. And I want reforms that ensure this never happens to anyone else. Even though you have the power to make Officer Sullivan's life very difficult, you're focused on systemic change. Especially because I have that power. If I use this incident just for personal revenge, I'm no better than the system that created the problem in the first place. Detective Williams stops the recording. Sir, off the record, I want you to know that what happened today was completely unacceptable. We will conduct a thorough investigation. Jonathan nods. I appreciate that, Detective, but understand, the whole city is watching now. This can't be buried in paperwork or lost in bureaucracy. There have to be real consequences. As both interviews conclude, word is spreading throughout Richmond PD that one of their officers has just committed what might be the most public act of police misconduct in the city's history. And everyone knows that this time there's nowhere to hide. By Monday morning, the story had exploded beyond Richmond's borders. CNN picks up the video footage. The Washington Post runs a front-page article titled, "When the Mayor Becomes the Victim, Police Misconduct in Virginia." Fox News debates whether Sullivan's actions constitute a federal civil rights violation. The hashtag #RichmondPD shame has over 50,000 posts and climbing. Chief of Police Michael Rodriguez calls an emergency meeting at 6 a.m. His department, which he's led for 8 years, is now under national scrutiny. The conference room fills with commanders, supervisors, and legal advisors, all trying to manage a crisis that threatens to engulf the entire organization. Ladies and gentlemen, Rodriguez begins, his voice tight with controlled anger. We have a situation that could destroy this department's credibility for decades. I want answers, and I want them now. Captain Sarah Mitchell, who oversees Sullivan's district, has brought a thick file folder. Her hands shake slightly as she opens it. Her own career is on the line here, too. Chief, we've been reviewing Officer Sullivan's record since Saturday night. What we've found is deeply troubling. She spreads documents across the conference table. Complaint after complaint dating back 3 years. Marcus Thompson, the investment banker Sullivan accused of car theft. The Johnson family harassed them at their picnic. The teenagers were questioned for volunteering at a community center. Pattern after pattern of targeting black citizens. 18 formal complaints in 3 years, Mitchell continues. All involving black citizens, all dismissed as unsubstantiated or unfounded. How many of these complaints reached my office? Rodriguez asks, though he already suspects the answer. None of them, sir. They were all handled at the supervisory level and classified as resolved through informal counseling. Rodriguez slams his hand on the table. Informal counseling? For 18 complaints of racial profiling? The room falls silent. Everyone knows the answer implicates not just Sullivan, but the supervisors who protected him, the captains who signed off on the dismissals, and the culture that made it all possible. Lieutenant James Crawford, the union representative, clears his throat. Chief, we need to be careful about rushing to judgment here. Officer Sullivan has been a dedicated member of this force for 15 years. Dedicated to what exactly? Rodriguez snaps. Terrorizing black citizens? Meanwhile, at the FBI's Richmond field office, Special Agent Jennifer Collins is reviewing the same case file with growing disbelief. Under federal law, Sullivan's actions could constitute deprivation of civil rights under color of law, a felony carrying up to 10 years in prison. Agent Martinez, Collins calls to her partner. Have you seen anything like this before? You mean a cop detaining a mayor while calling him racial slurs? No, this is a first. Collins shakes her head. I mean the pattern. Look at these prior incidents. Sullivan wasn't just having a bad day. This is systematic targeting of black citizens over multiple years. The federal investigation moves swiftly. Collins assigns a team of 6 agents to interview every complainant from Sullivan's file. By Tuesday morning, they're hearing stories that make seasoned federal investigators sick to their stomachs. Marcus Thompson, the investment banker, sits in the field office conference room. He's a successful professional, Harvard MBA, but his voice shakes as he recounts his humiliation. He made me sit on the curb for 2 hours while he verified that I owned my own car. My son was in the back seat, crying, asking why the police officer was being so mean to Daddy. Sullivan kept saying things like, "Boys like you need to learn respect." My 8-year-old son heard a police officer call his father boy. Thompson breaks down completely. "I teach my son to respect authority, to trust police officers. How do I explain that some of them see him as a threat just because of his skin color?" Mrs. Dorothy Johnson, the mother from the park incident, struggles to maintain her composure. She's brought her husband William for support, but both of them are reliving trauma from 6 months ago. "My children were terrified," she says. "My youngest daughter, she's only 5, asked me if we were going to jail because we had a picnic. Officer Sullivan made us all line up against the picnic table while he ran our IDs. He said our gathering looked suspicious, and we needed to prove we belonged in a public park." Her husband adds, "When I asked him what law we were breaking, he said I was being aggressive and uncooperative." Then he called for backup. 4 police cars for a family picnic. Each interview builds the same devastating pattern. Sullivan targeted black citizens with impunity, knowing the system would protect him. The federal prosecutors realize they have enough evidence for multiple civil rights violations spanning 3 years. Back at Richmond PD, Detective Patricia Williams is conducting her own systematic review. She's discovered that Sullivan's complaints weren't just dismissed, they were actively buried. Reports were filed incorrectly, witness contact information was never recorded, and evidence was conveniently lost. Sergeant Lisa Carter sits across from Detective Williams, her 15-year career hanging in the balance. She requested union representation but waived her right to remain silent, desperate to salvage something from this disaster. "Lisa, you supervised Sullivan directly for 2 years. Walk me through how you handled complaints against him." Chen's voice is barely above a whisper. "I was told they were frivolous, that people in certain neighborhoods file complaints to get out of legitimate tickets and arrests." "Who told you that?" "Captain Mitchell. She said Sullivan was a good officer who worked difficult beats and that complaints came with the territory. She said if we investigated every complaint seriously, we'd never get any real police work done." Detective Williams slides a stack of complaint forms across the table. "Lisa, did you ever read these complaints thoroughly?" Chen glances at the papers and her face goes pale. I skimmed them. Captain Mitchell said the important thing was to document that we'd received them and taken appropriate action." "What did you consider appropriate action?" "Usually a verbal counseling session, sometimes requiring Sullivan to watch a diversity training video." "Did you ever personally investigate any of these complaints? Interview witnesses? Review evidence?" Chen's silence stretches for nearly a minute. When she finally speaks, her voice breaks. "No, I never did." Detective Williams slides a photograph across the table, Sullivan standing over Marcus Thompson while the businessman's 8-year-old son watches from the car, tears streaming down his face. "Lisa, look at this picture. Look at that child's face. Does this look like a frivolous complaint to you?" Chen breaks down completely, her sobs echoing in the small interview room. "I knew something was wrong. God help me, I knew it, and I did nothing. I was afraid to rock the boat, afraid to challenge Captain Mitchell, afraid to be labeled a troublemaker, and now, look what happened." The investigation reveals layer after layer of institutional failure. Sullivan wasn't just a rogue officer. He was protected by a system that valued loyalty over accountability, that dismissed community concerns as troublemaking, that allowed racism to flourish behind the thin blue line. Tuesday brings another devastating revelation. Records show that 3 black officers in Sullivan's district had filed informal complaints about his behavior over the past year. All 3 were told to handle it internally and warned about the consequences of airing dirty laundry outside the department. Officer Keisha Washington, a 5-year veteran, finally agrees to speak to Internal Affairs. "Sullivan would make comments about black citizens that made my skin crawl," she testifies. "He'd say things like, 'Time to go hunting,' when we got calls in predominantly black neighborhoods. When I told him his language was inappropriate, he said I was too sensitive and needed to toughen up. Did you report these comments to your supervisors?' I tried. Sergeant Carter told me that Sullivan was from a different generation, and I should focus on being a good teammate rather than stirring up trouble. The systematic cover-up becomes impossible to ignore. This wasn't just one bad officer. It was an entire chain of command that enabled and protected racist behavior. Thursday afternoon brings the confrontation everyone has been dreading. Internal Affairs arranges a mediated session between Mayor Williams and Officer Sullivan, with lawyers present for both parties. The meeting is requested by Sullivan's attorney as a last-ditch effort to avoid federal prosecution. Sullivan enters the room looking like a man who's aged 10 years in 4 days. His union representative, Attorney David Park, has clearly told him that his career is over and his freedom is in jeopardy. Sullivan's wife has filed for divorce. His adult children aren't taking his calls. The hatred he directed at others has consumed his own life. Mayor Williams sits calmly, his hands folded on the conference table. He's refused his lawyer's advice to avoid this meeting, saying that accountability requires facing the person you've wronged. Officer Sullivan, the mediator begins, this is your opportunity to address Mayor Williams directly about the events of Saturday afternoon. Sullivan looks across the table at the man he humiliated, the man he called boy, the man whose dignity he tried to strip away on a public street. When he speaks, his voice cracks with what might be genuine remorse or calculated desperation. Mr. Mayor, I want to apologize for my actions. I made a terrible mistake. Jonathan's expression doesn't change. What kind of mistake, Officer Sullivan? I should have listened when people told me who you were. I should have been more respectful. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking what kind of mistake you made. Sullivan looks confused, glancing at his lawyer for guidance. I don't understand. Officer Sullivan, if I had been just another black man visiting his daughter, would your actions have been acceptable? The question cuts through Sullivan's prepared apology like a blade. His lawyer shifts uncomfortably, recognizing the trap but unable to help his client avoid it. No, sir, but I thought... You thought what? That black men don't belong in nice neighborhoods? That we're automatically suspicious? That you had the right to humiliate me because of the color of my skin? Sullivan has no answer because any honest response would be an admission of guilt that could be used against him in federal court. Jonathan leans forward, his voice remaining calm but carrying the weight of authority that comes from years of leadership. Officer Sullivan, you didn't just make a mistake. You revealed who you are. You showed the entire city how you treat black citizens when you think no one important is watching. The only thing you're sorry about is getting caught. Mr. Mayor, please, I have a family. So did Marcus Thompson when you humiliated him in front of his son. So did the Johnson family when you treated them like criminals for having a picnic. Did you think about their families? Sullivan's composure finally breaks. I never meant for it to go this far. I was just doing my job. Your job was to protect and serve all citizens equally. Instead, you used your badge to terrorize people based on their race. That's not police work. That's terrorism. Jonathan stands up, signaling the end of the conversation. Officer Sullivan, I want you to understand something. When you called me boy, when you refused to believe I could be the mayor, when you treated me like a criminal, that wasn't just about me. You were telling every black person in this city that we don't matter, that we don't belong, that we're not worthy of basic human dignity. Sullivan looks up, his eyes red with tears that could be genuine remorse or self-pity. I'm going to make sure this never happens to anyone else, Jonathan continues. Not because I'm the mayor, but because it's right. Your career is over, Officer Sullivan. But the changes we make because of what you did, those will last long after you're forgotten. The mediation ends with no resolution, no handshake, no forgiveness. Just the bitter acknowledgement that some actions can't be undone, only learned from. 6 weeks after that Saturday afternoon in the Riverside District, Officer Derek Sullivan stands before Federal Judge Maria Santos in the Eastern District Court of Virginia. The courtroom is packed with his victims, community leaders, and media from across the country. Sullivan has pleaded guilty to 3 federal civil rights violations. Mr. Sullivan, Judge Santos begins, your actions represent a fundamental betrayal of the oath you took to protect and serve all citizens equally. Marcus Thompson addresses the court, his 8-year-old son sitting in the gallery. Your Honor, my son still asks me why that police officer was so mean to us. Sullivan didn't just violate my rights, he damaged my child's faith in justice itself. Mrs. Johnson speaks next, her voice strong despite her tears. Officer Sullivan taught my 5-year-old daughter that the color of her skin makes her a suspect in her own community. Judge Santos sentences Sullivan to 2 years in federal prison and 5 years of supervised probation. This sentence reflects not just your actions on that Saturday afternoon, but the pattern of racial targeting that terrorized Richmond's black community for years. The real changes are happening within Richmond PD itself. Chief Rodriguez announces sweeping reforms. We failed our community, we allowed a culture of racism to flourish, and we protected officers who should have been held accountable years ago. Every officer must complete 40 hours of updated bias training within 90 days. Body cameras become mandatory for all interactions, with severe penalties for technical malfunctions. A new community oversight board with subpoena power will review all complaints involving racial bias. Captain Sarah Mitchell, who buried Sullivan's complaints for years, accepts early retirement rather than face termination. I told myself I was protecting good officers from frivolous complaints. In reality, I was protecting bad officers from accountability. Richmond implements a new early warning system that flags officers with multiple complaints. Supervisors who fail to properly investigate face automatic suspension and retraining. The police union initially fights the reforms, but public pressure forces their acceptance. Union President Robert Hayes admits, "Our members deserve better training and clearer standards. The old system failed everyone." Mayor Williams uses his platform to push for statewide police reform. He testifies before the Virginia General Assembly. "What happened to me was wrong, but it wasn't unique. Every day, black citizens face the same suspicion, the same disrespect, the same violation of their dignity." The state legislature passes the Police Accountability Act, requiring bias training, community oversight, and transparent complaint processes for all law enforcement agencies in Virginia. 6 months later, the data shows measurable progress. Traffic stops of black drivers in Richmond have decreased by 23%, while arrests for serious crimes remain stable. Citizen complaints about police misconduct have dropped by 40%, and public trust has begun to recover. Officer Martinez, who tried to warn Sullivan that day, becomes a symbol of positive change. She's promoted to sergeant and helps lead the new bias training program. We have to hold each other accountable. Silence in the face of racism makes us all complicit. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who witnessed the incident, starts a community policing group in Riverside District. "We can't just complain about problems. We have to be part of the solution. The changes aren't perfect, and progress isn't always linear. Some officers resist the new culture, and some community members remain skeptical of reform promises they've heard before. But something fundamental has shifted in Richmond. The lie that racism in policing is just a few bad apples has been exposed as the systemic failure it always was. And for the first time in years, both police officers and citizens believe that real change is possible. 1 year later, Mayor Jonathan Williams stands in the same Riverside district where Officer Derek Sullivan tried to strip away his dignity. But today, he's not alone. Dozens of community members, police officers, and city officials have gathered for the dedication of the new community policing center. "A year ago, I was humiliated on this very street," Jonathan tells the crowd. "Today, we're turning that moment of injustice into a foundation for lasting change." The statistics tell a remarkable story. Police complaints involving racial bias have dropped by 60% across Richmond. Officer body camera footage has led to 3 additional misconduct convictions and prevented countless other incidents. The Community Oversight Board has reviewed 127 cases, with 89% of complainants expressing satisfaction with the process. But the real measure of progress isn't in numbers. It's in the faces of families who no longer fear walking through their own neighborhoods. Marcus Thompson brings his son to the dedication ceremony. The boy, now 9, shakes hands with Officer Martinez and asks her questions about police work. He wants to be a police officer when he grows up, Thompson says, his voice filled with cautious hope. "A year ago, that would have terrified me. Today, I think he could help make the system better." Mrs. Johnson addresses the crowd, her 5-year-old daughter standing proudly beside her. "My daughter used to hide when she saw police cars. Now she waves. That's how I know we're moving in the right direction." Sullivan himself serves his federal sentence in a minimum security facility in West Virginia. Prison records show he's participated in racial sensitivity counseling and written letters of apology to his victims. Whether his remorse is genuine or calculated for early release remains unclear. What's certain is that his badge and authority can never again be used to terrorize innocent people. The Richmond model is spreading. Police departments in Norfolk, Newport News, and Virginia Beach have implemented similar oversight programs. The Police Accountability Act has become a template for federal legislation, with congressional hearings scheduled for next month. Change is possible, Mayor Williams concludes his remarks. But it requires courage from all of us. The courage to admit when we're wrong, the courage to hold each other accountable, and the courage to believe that tomorrow can be better than today. As the ceremony ends, neighbors return to their daily routines. Children play in yards their parents once avoided. Families gather in parks without fear of harassment. Police officers patrol with community trust slowly rebuilding. The work isn't finished. Systemic racism wasn't dismantled in a year, and vigilance remains essential to prevent backsliding. But Richmond has proven that accountability is possible, that justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied, and that individual courage can spark institutional change. Now we want to hear from you. Have you witnessed or experienced racial profiling in your community? What changes would you like to see in local law enforcement? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters in this ongoing conversation about justice and equality. If this story opened your eyes to the reality of police misconduct and the possibility of meaningful reform, hit that like button and share this video with your friends and family. Subscribe for more stories about justice, accountability, and the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary change. Because the next Derek Sullivan is out there somewhere, and the next Jonathan Williams might be you.
The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction, and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silenced.